Good Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. NFL quarterback, former NFL quarterback Dan Orlovsky, talking about the Browns quarterback situation this year. This from ESPN's Get Up.
What is your sense right now of Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland?
Is the chatter real? And that's my question. And can you make Cleveland and Andrew Berry, the GM, and Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, say, why not? You've heard a lot of reports from a lot of different people, like, man, Shedeur looks really good in this OTA or really good at that OTA, or he's commanding the offense. And now you're going into minicamp. Can Shedeur continue that positive chatter, if it's real, and get that organization to sit back and say, you know what? Why not start him? Why not see what he has this year? Because either you figure out who your starter is moving forward, or you weaponize those 2 first-round picks in Cleveland for the 26th draft.
Well, so look, I agree with you. You have to figure out if you don't have your quarterback of the future on the roster this season, which means that even if Joe Flacco starts the year, unless they stun the world and are winning a lot of games, you've got to make sure you know what you have in Dillon Gabriel, who you drafted, and Shedeur Sanders, and maybe to some degree Kenny Pickett. That has to be the plan in Cleveland, right?
Well, those players have to earn playing time. They have to play well in order to be put on the field. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on who might be a guy to replace Nick Chubb.
Do you feel like Quinshon Judkins is a guy who can do what Nick Chubb did 4 or 5 years ago? Fresher legs and a lot less money.
I do. I do. I like Judkins a lot. I think Andrew has done a good job of preparing for this and actually paving the way for it, because all draft season I was hammering they better get a running back. After the quarter, they better get a running back, and they got 2 of them. So he obviously felt the same way.
Browns fans, they're going to immediately compare Quinshon Judkins to Nick Chubb.
Well, it helps that he's an Ohio Stater and not from Michigan.
Well, sure, but there is pressure there.
Yeah. But I think fans will give him a break, and no one's holding it against Judkins.
Right.
That he's the replacement.
Are they comparing him to the Nick Chubb that we saw the last year, or are they comparing him to a Nick Chubb that doesn't exist anymore? That's kind of the question. Damian Woody, Dan Orlovsky again from ESPN's Get Up, where they view Shedeur Sanders sitting as we head into this week's mandatory minicamp for the Browns.
We've been talking about all the draft and pre-draft, but the superpowers that he has from the neck up, to me, that will help him get on the field faster than anything else will.
He has to force that organization to play him because he's so impressive. And it will start this week, and then it will start for them to say, let's give him reps versus our #1 defense in training camp and see how he does.
I totally understand why you say that, because he's a 5th-round pick. But the circumstances in his case are so unique, I actually think they should want it to.
Oh, I've been very adamant. If I was Cleveland, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders would be my starting quarterback.
One or the other.
Day one.
Yeah.
Day one.
Maybe day one, and if not, then pretty soon.
Yes.
Let Flacco, get beat up a little bit early by that schedule. No disrespect, Joe.
Rookies got to earn it. They have to earn the right to be a starting quarterback in a regular season game. It shouldn't be given to anybody. It just shouldn't. All right, let's turn our attention to the Guardians. Yesterday, trying to avoid being swept at home by the Houston Astros. They've gotten really good starting pitching, and Tanner Bybee continued that streak. Strikes out Jeremy Pena to begin the game, and Bybee really got on a roll. Pitched into the 7th inning and gave up only 2 earned runs. Ended up 6 1/3 with 6 strikeouts. Really kept Houston off balance the entire game. Another really good start and outing for Tanner Bybee. Game was scoreless 2nd inning. Bo Naylor won for his last 23 up with a man on, and Bo Naylor turns on it and gets all of it. A 2-run homer to right field gave the Guardians the 2-0 lead. It stayed 2-0 until the 7th inning. 2 on, 1 out, and Bybee gets too much of the plate. Rookie Cam Smith makes him pay. It's a 2-run double to left center, ties the game up at 2. Bottom of the 7th inning, 2 on and 1 out. Will Wilson at the plate, and it's a good bunt. Okert, the pitcher, fields it and throws it away. Nolan Jones, running all the way from second, scores to give the Guardians a 3-2 lead. Next batter, Stephen Kwan. And Stephen Kwan will do his job. Quan gets a sacrifice fly to bring in another run. Cade Smith, Emmanuel Clase finish it out. Guardians win it 4-2. Stephen Vogt on the offense late, and the job Bibby did as a starter.
Obviously getting the early runs, Bo, with a great swing. And then for J-Rod coming up first day to get the rally going, it was, good. And then a little guard ball with the bunt and the throwaway, and that looked like us. And again, we're going to have these games. Again, the whole weekend we were in all three of these games, and felt like we could have won all three of them.
You guys are 28-0 now when leading after the seventh inning. So, what's that say about the back end of your bullpen?
I mean, that they're the best. They're the best. The back end of our bullpen as a whole, it's one of our biggest strengths, if not our biggest strength. So we trust those guys. That was special. The whole outing. He could have gone 8-9 innings today with the stuff he had. Just making pitches when he needed to. A couple soft contacts, but that's as good as we've seen his spin pitches, and coupling that with the two fastballs and the changeup. Again, like this is second or third outing like this where he's had everything in his arsenal, and the quick outs he was getting today, that was as efficient as we've seen him.
So the Reds are in town to start a 3-game series tonight. Luis Ortiz to face Wade Miley in the pitching matchup. 6:40 is game time. Guardians also activate Lane Thomas from the injured list, and they send Will Wilson to AAA Columbus. Some Cavaliers news of note. Darius Garland underwent surgery on that big toe that was keeping him out of several playoff games. Expected to need 4 or 5 months to recover, but on schedule to be ready for the beginning of training camp. Time for us to take a quick timeout. Browns are up first. We talk with Ashley Bastock from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, $10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We begin by talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Pat McAfee, Ian Rappaport from ESPN talking about the news that Nick Chubb is signing with the Houston Texans, 1-year deal.
Anywhere is a big deal. Mm-hmm. If he's anywhere near what he was, this is a massive get for the Houston Texans. Is there any other signing that, or any other things happening around the NFL we've missed?
First, I like this one.
I hate it.
We'll see how much he has left. If he's close to what he was, I mean, look. If he's close to what he was, him and Joe Mixon are going to be a insanely physical duo.
With that, let's welcome in Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Ashley, we knew it was coming. It's close to official, as close as you can get to official. Fans are upset about Nick Chubb. I would just say it kind of shows you where they view this roster being, that they want rookies in there running the football.
Yeah, I think this offseason we've seen the Browns remake their running back room in a way that it was going to be really difficult for Nick Chubb to come back. I think obviously Nick Chubb is so important to the city of Cleveland, to the fan base, to guys in the locker room. When he got injured 2 years ago with the gruesome knee injury in Pittsburgh, the team dedicated the rest of their season to Nick Chubb, right? I mean, he's ingrained himself in a way that I think is really difficult for players to do. So I understand fans being really upset by this one, or it almost feeling not real. But I think when you look at what the Browns did by drafting 2 rookies, not using just one draft pick, but drafting 2 rookies and taking Quinshon Judkins in the 30s, I mean, that's a high pick. You want Quinshon Judkins to play right away. And Nick Chubb is not going to be a special team key contributor or like your third down type of back that you're only using in in special packages or anything like that. Like Nick Chubb is a bell cow back. That is his identity as a football player. I think that's when he's been at his best. And I think the Browns just want something different out of that room and felt like they had to go younger. And I think the writing was just on the wall when they brought Quinshon Judkins in. And I do think, like, if Nick Chubb is, as they were saying in that clip, if he can get back to old Nick Chubb, that's an amazing get for Houston. I know Browns fans will be even more upset, but I think with how the Browns are looking at it, like, what role was Nick Chubb going to have if he came back? Was it going to be a good fit? Was it a role he would even want? And I think the answer to that is no, because I really think, like, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, they're going to want both of those guys to play a lot. And Quinshon Judkins is here to be that bell cow back.
So Andrew Berry was on the First Pick podcast in conjunction with CBS, talking about the draft and that trade from number 2 to number 5 with the Jaguars.
We knew we were due for a little bit of a strategic pivot, and that could mean a variety of ways when you're sitting with the number 2 pick. Probably the most direct path is you take a young quarterback, hit on him, and it's the most important position in sports. One of the alternative paths is you take a non-quarterback, in this position, potentially the best player in the draft with Travis, and someone that the league hasn't really seen before in terms of a two-way player. And then the third avenue, which you've seen teams really like Philadelphia and Detroit maybe walk this route, where you're able to take a very good player, but significantly increase the amount of resources that you have to build the team over a multi-year time horizon. And, I remember one of the first conversations we had with James, and he expressed the interest in coming up. I was like, hey, essentially, well, what are you thinking? Is this because, Rand and James, you both know this, that some inquiries are just more calls to check the box, and then others are actually serious inquiries. I remember telling James, I was like, we're in a position where we're probably either going to take a quarterback or we'll take the best player in the draft. So for us to move off of the pick, it's got to be something significant that really helps our organization over the long run.
And Ashley, one of those picks ended up being Quinshon Judkins. But again, it just tells you they're trying to get younger and replenish the talent. And I know fans don't want to hear it. They had 3 first-round picks that went in the Deshaun Watson trade. So part of it is you got to get guys that can be effective and the pillars of your franchise moving forward.
I think Andrew Berry has been honest about that too. And when he made, right after making that deal and trading down to get Mason Graham, in his presser, he basically said, some of this does have to do with maybe recouping some stuff from the Deshaun Watson trade. And then the other thing he came out and said is that they really believe that next year's draft is really, really strong. And I think that's what every analyst believed going into this year as well. That next year is just, I think overall, not just at quarterback, a stronger draft class. So yes, by moving back, I think the Mason Graham trade down in general is something that's grown on more people as we've gotten further away from the draft. I mean, I know for me personally, when it first happened, I'm like, I had a hard time reconciling this idea of trading away from a surefire thing in Travis Hunter, who by all accounts is going to be this transformational player, in the hopes of getting another transformational player next year. Like, why wouldn't you just take the guy who's right there? But you see some of the things it allowed them to do. You see the wiggle room it gives them next year. And obviously that extra first round pick is huge. So I have no doubt that that was probably the biggest thing that swayed Andrew Berry, was knowing that next year, hey, you're going to potentially have multiple swings in the first round, or you have that extra pick to wheel and deal. We know they love to do that. So there's a lot of different ways it could go, but I think it was appealing to them because it gives them so many options in the future to help restock and get this team a little bit younger.
All right. You've seen all of the OTAs and mini camps that have been open to the media. What are some of your observations of this year's rookie class?
Yeah, I mean, I think Quinshon Judkins, to stick with the running backs, has obviously looked really good. He's gotten some of those first team reps. So is Jerome Ford. But I mean, I think, again, we all know it's going to be Quinshon Judkins, but you see how hard he runs in that running style that Ohio State fans are, of course, familiar with. I think Mason Graham, I've also spent a decent chunk of time watching. He's a guy who, to me, looks the part. I mean, obviously, a lot was made about him getting sick on the sidelines at rookie minicamp. Kevin Stefanski joked he ate his chicken wings too close to practice that day. We've seen that happen with guys before, but you watch him working with Jacques Césaire, the D-line coach, and he's taking coaching. You see his leverage. And then, of course, what everyone wants to know is the quarterbacks. You know, I think we've gotten a chance to see both Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders taking team reps now. You know, we didn't get to see Shedeur do that in the first open OTA session. He did do that, but I'm curious with both of those guys, from what we've seen so far, are we going to get to see them take any first team reps this week as we get into minicamp? Because I think that's going to be huge. And in terms of speculation about where the quarterback competition stands and who looks good, all those things. I mean, I think how guys do with first team pass catchers and against a first team defense is really key in evaluating them. So I'm very curious to see. We know they're two spotting a lot of those quarterback drills, so guys are getting a lot of reps, but I really want to see Shedeur Sanders, especially with those first team pass catchers, and see him get a chance to throw to guys like Jerry Jeudy, like David Njoku. And, you know, Dillon Gabriel, I think the height thing has always been a question for people throughout the draft with him. And then obviously with the Browns taking him, it's something Browns fans have focused in on. It didn't help much when we saw Mason Graham bat down one of his passes in team drills a couple weeks ago. So same with him. I mean, I'm curious to see what's this going to look like when you're going up against those first team D linemen, but you have those first team pass catchers as well.
So I know you wrote an article based on Jim Schwartz media availability last week talking about Mason Graham. Said that there was meat on the bone for him production-wise in the Browns system. Take us through why you think what you said in that article and what you think he meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to ask about that is just from talking to folks at Michigan and watching Mason Graham at Michigan. The scheme is so different, what they ran there. You know, it's more of a traditional role for an interior D lineman. You're eating up a lot of blocks. You're keeping things clear to let your linebackers get to work. And that is the exact opposite of a Jim Schwartz scheme. And that's why so many D linemen, especially D tackles, like to play in it, because he gives them the opportunity and the chance to get after quarterbacks. And I think Mason Graham still did that in college, but it's impressive he had the numbers he did in the system that he had to play at Michigan, where he was moving a bit more laterally instead of moving a bit more east-west, I should say, rather than north-south. And I think if you're an athletic D lineman, you want to be getting after QBs and doing that. So Jim Schwartz kind of affirmed all that, what we thought. And it was interesting to hear him say, you know, there have been some growing pains. I think a lot of times people think, oh, it's a top 5 pick, he's going to go in, it's going to be pretty seamless. But because the defense is so different, there's a lot he has to learn. It's nothing to be concerned about, I don't think. It's to be expected. And if anyone knows how to handle that, it's Jim Schwartz too. So I think you can see how excited he gets talking about Mason Graham, because these guys think, hey, there's a lot more to this kid once we get him in this system, and how disruptive he can be.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about quarterback and some offensive line. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Former NFL quarterback Dan Orlovsky with how he thinks the skill set of Shedeur Sanders will play in the NFL with the Browns. This from ESPN's Get Up.
There are some quarterbacks who they have these talents that just jump off the page, right? If he's got a cannon for an arm or if he can run like Lamar Jackson or whatever, I can see where that would be easy to identify in any setting.
Yes.
Shedeur Sanders' superpowers are the opposite of that, right? They're all the things that actually make quarterbacks good. They're processing and reading the defense and all that. I'm asking you, my quarterback, does that stuff become obvious in training camp scenarios?
Fast.
They'll see that fast?
Fast.
Then he's going to look great quickly.
And let me say this. If this offense is going under Kevin Stefanski, at least rumors to what it was a couple years ago, he's perfect for it. Because he's perfect for the under center, play action, control the line of scrimmage, see the defense, get from 1 to 2 to 3 quickly, or 1 to 2 to 3, he's got to do it more quickly. But he's custom made for that. But the way that he thinks and the way that he can see something on the board, take it to a walkthrough, and then bring it to a practice, that's
how you win.
I also think the things that affected his draft stock, which might have been the fact he's never played for a head coach other than his father, the fact that he didn't have an agent, the fact that he didn't do any of the pre-draft workouts or attend the combine in a way where he's going to compete, none of that matters now.
Ashley, it is interesting. And I understand. And when a quarterback like Dan Orlovsky can tell you the things that he thinks will show up, I pay a little bit closer attention. It's a guy that should know.
Yeah, it's a guy who played the position. So I think their words carry a different kind of weight, right? But I think he's exactly right. I mean, at the Combine, I wrote a whole story about why Shedeur Sanders would be a fit in a Kevin Stefanski offense. And it's basically all the things you said, right? His processing, the play action scheme is one that is friendly towards him. This is a friendly quarterback scheme in general that I think a rookie could benefit from. And I think the other thing about Shedeur that wasn't mentioned there that people kept pointing out in the draft process is the fact that his fundamentals are very strong, right? He stays fundamentally sound. It makes sense considering Deion Sanders has been his coach for, as they've talked about, like most of his football playing life, right? So that's a good thing to have when you're a rookie, and especially when you're a team that has struggled turning the football over. Now, in terms of the questions about Shedeur, I think a lot, rightfully so, has been made of that Colorado O-line. He didn't have top-tier protection, obviously. So now I think in terms of those questions about him, to the point of he has a chance to kind of erase or change a lot of those narratives. Like, we're going to see, okay, how much of the drifting backwards in particular and the taking sacks just goes away by nature of, hey, I suddenly have better protection. Like, he's going to get a chance, I hope, to show that here. And again, like I said earlier, hopefully get a chance to take some first team reps and really so everyone can get a feel for where he stands as we, prepare to head into the dead time here before training camp starts in July.
So I know you wrote an article about Dawand Jones kind of embracing the challenge of playing left tackle. Before we get into that, we keep hearing, they got to identify if it's Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. How important is it to identify if Dawand Jones is one of your two tackles moving forward?
I mean, I think it's incredibly important. We know how important the left tackle spot is. And, I think ideally this regime thought they solved it in 2020 when they took Jed Wills 10th overall. And that's obviously not how it worked out. I think if you are right about Dawand Jones and he does become your long-term answer at left tackle, that's a huge deal, because not only did you manage to fix a problem before it became a problem, in the sense that you're not sitting here wondering, oh gosh, who's going to start for us because we can't bring Jed Wills back and he might not be able to play this year. So I think for me, that's like maybe the second biggest question on offense right now is Dawand your long-term answer at left tackle? And then I think it's, okay, can he stay healthy, which we talked about, I asked him about. That was a point of the story because his first 2 years have ended with injury. And can he successfully make this transition? Something I think he's working very hard at physically and mentally, and really seems bought into, even if it was an idea that he was a little hesitant about at first, about switching over to the left from the right. He's right-handed. He's played right tackle for most of his life. So it is a change, but I think if they can figure it out, it's a big deal. And especially knowing, hey, this was a 4th-round draft pick that you really hit on. Not only is he a starter, but he's a starter at really a premium position for you on your offense.
Yeah, and keep in mind, if you identify a young franchise quarterback, running back and left tackle are going to be his 2 best friends.
Exactly. You need somebody to protect him, and especially, you look at these 2 young quarterbacks, I think it's going to ease their minds and their development a lot if they're not getting hit constantly. And that O-line last year, there was just so much turmoil. I mean, 7 different starting lineups in the first 8 games due to injuries. They just never really seemed to get collectively going as a unit. Then you put Dawand Jones in there at left. He makes 3 good starts and breaks his fibula, right? It was a freak thing. But yeah, 1,000%. If Dawand Jones could become these guys' best friend, I think, or Big Thanos, as his teammates have so aptly nicknamed him.
Before we go to break, Harold Fannon, what have you thought about him, the rookie tight end again? They need him to play well.
Yeah, he's a guy I didn't mention up the top there in the first section of this just because we wanted to talk quarterbacks, obviously. But I've been really, really, really impressed with Harold Fannon through these OTAs and rookie minicamp. I mean, I think you see everything that the Browns saw, right? And Andrew Berry has referred to him as the queen on the chessboard. I think obviously they love his production in not just at BG as a whole, but specifically in big time games like against A&M, against Penn State. Like, he performed in those big time situations when the spotlight was on him. And I think, look, we know that throughout the voluntary portion of the offseason, guys aren't penalized. David Njoku, though, not being there, at least when we were out there, that meant Harold Fannon was getting first team reps, and he was looking really good. I thought he looked really good with Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett in particular, since those were the guys who got most of the first team reps. And you saw his creation after the catch ability. You saw him make some tight grabs in the end zone over the last couple weeks. I'm really excited about Harold Fannon. I think he's made the most of these extra opportunities with David Njoku not being at the voluntary portion that we've seen.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about mandatory minicamp getting underway. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Damian Woody and Dan Orlovsky, a couple of former players, reading the Browns quarterback situation in that quarterback room.
If I'm the Cleveland Browns, I know what Joe Flacco is.
Right.
I pretty much know what Kenny Pickett is. He's been on like 3 teams in 3 years. I need to know what these other guys are. But he was drafted behind Dylan Gabriel for a reason by the organization. So listen, he's got to be methodical and trying to get up, trying to get up there and earn some playing time with the Cleveland Browns.
I think June does matter. I know it's August. He has to go do it. But again, the chatter, at least a lot of the reports are that it's this. So can he do it in a mini camp when probably going to get more veterans in this situation, probably have more opportunities to maybe run the number 2 offense versus the number 1 defense? So all you're trying to do is get yourself into that setting where you force the conversation to be had around a table like this, being like, hey, how do we want to change the way we were going to go about this in August? Do we want to give him more reps in a preseason game 1 with our starters?
And Ashley, I keep hearing people say they have to find out what they have in Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. they probably will know day in and day out by working with them what they have. It is important for a rookie to earn his playing time so that the other players should be the ones going, man, that guy should be playing. It should be the players that feel that way first.
Yeah, I think, though, to the point of why is everyone so adamant about knowing what they have? I think obviously it's important for this year, but I think it's even more important for next year when you have those first 2-round picks and you have to decide, hey, are we going to try to delve into that deeper quarterback class, or do we think we have a guy in-house? So, yeah, I think they have to earn it. I mean, we know that's been the messaging, but I think that's what makes it so intriguing with this 2-spotting and making sure they get a ton of reps. But you're still in a 4-way competition right now. And I think if it was only Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders really in that room, their development could be going a lot faster potentially, right? Just because they would be the ones taking all of the first team reps and they would be getting more reps, but that's just not the situation the Browns are in right now. I would also argue in disagreeing with that clip. I don't think the Browns are set on what Kenny Pickett is. I actually think that's why he's here. I don't know how much I personally agree with this sentiment, but I think what the Browns saw when they went out to trade for him and obviously give up a draft pick in order to acquire him is that he is potentially a part of this trend we've seen recently of quarterbacks who a few teams down the line, a la a Baker Mayfield or a Sam Darnold, suddenly something clicks and they become the best versions of themselves. I think the Browns are hoping that that's what they have in Kenny Pickett, that now at his next stop, he could really turn into something. Now, again, I don't know that I've seen enough to fully buy into that, but I do think that is their thinking. So in terms of like, is that going to, they know what Kenny Pickett is. Should he be getting less reps because they need to figure out what the other guys are? I don't think that's entirely true either. I think there's plenty they still want to figure out about Kenny Pickett. And I think that's why we're in a 4-way competition right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I mean, it's kind of mind-numbing that he would still be on his rookie contract. It's only his 4th year in the league.
Yeah.
So let that sink in a little when you think of where he is developmentally. Minicamp gets underway. What are you paying attention to? I know the quarterbacks, but take us through kind of what you're kind of focusing in on.
Yeah, it's so tough at minicamp because like you're still at a point where there's not, it's not full go yet. So at least we're out there day to day. And I think with the OTAs in particular, I know we want to talk about watching quarterbacks, but even for me, the thing to really pay attention to is how are these reps divided? Because I think at the end of all of this, the Browns are going to stick to their talking points. They're not really going to want to give us any hints verbally about where the QB competition stands. But I think this is our first chance to be out there consecutive days to see how those reps are divided up. How often are these guys getting first team snaps? What is the pecking order? Because you can, omit things in terms of where the QB competition stands, and you can say we don't have a depth chart and all these things. But the reps do not lie to me. Like that is tangible fact. So I think it's that thing, number one. Number two, in terms of your pass catchers, I'm really curious to see what each of these guys, again, to go back to the importance of first team reps. I want to see everyone hopefully this week get a chance to throw to Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. I mean, I think that's going to be key in seeing who gels really well there. I think Joe Flacco has a head start with Jerry Jeudy, even though those two have never played together. And Jerry Jeudy talked glowingly about him a couple of weeks ago. So really for me, I think that's the most important thing. I think in these practices, it still is very difficult to judge linemen, which is unfortunate because obviously Mason Graham, Dawand Jones, those are two big guys you would want to be paying attention to this week. But I think there's just still only so much for us to glean in terms of what's going on in the trenches. And that's just the reality of where we are with the rules and what they can do in these practices.
Yeah, it's like gym class. They're in shorts, they're in a helmet. It's gym class. You mentioned the pass catchers. Deontay Johnson is a guy that I think they're probably hoping can be the number 2, number 3 guy, with Cedric Tillman. He wasn't there for any of the voluntary portions that we saw. Is that a concern? And I get it's voluntary. We may have we may find out there was a reason that he had to do X, Y, or Z. But if not, it's kind of like, especially given how last year went for him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of how I've been talking about it as well, with that disclaimer, right? Because it is voluntary. And if a guy has a legitimate reason to not be there, you don't want to hammer somebody unfairly for not attending something that's voluntary. But I think looking at his career path, bouncing back and forth between 3 teams, there's questions about how he is personality-wise and now production-wise. I think you would have preferred to have him there if that was at all possible. If it was at all possible for him to have been there for this voluntary stuff, that would have been preferable. But obviously now we're to the mandatory point, so we're going to get to see him. But I would say, just given the questions about him, and hey, this may be being kind of the last chance to revive his career without having a valid or a rock solid reason, I'll say. It was kind of eyebrow raising, I'll put it that way, for him not to be there when we were out there. Now, who knows? Guys sometimes are in and out. They're not going to take attendance and tell us that. But with where everything stands, I think that's a guy you would hope would be getting a ton of reps in with these quarterbacks, especially.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there. There is an opportunity for significant, important playing time with the Browns. And quite frankly, he could solve another issue, the third wide receiver with some experience.
Yeah, that's something the Browns just haven't been able to figure out really in my time covering the team over these last handful of years. They thought they had it on Elijah Moore, right? That experiment didn't really play out. And I think they're hoping they stumbled into something. And, I think too, hey, it's a question still about Ced Tillman, right? I really like Ced Tillman. I think we've seen a lot from him, but missing 6 games with a concussion last year to end his year, that's a lot of games. And I'm curious to hear from Ced the next time we do get to talk to him. Hopefully we'll get to talk to him this week. But, I think the concern becomes when a guy has a concussion and it takes a long time to recover. Usually what you see is it takes longer and longer to recover if you get any more. So I think you have to be concerned about, hey, hopefully this doesn't happen to him again. Of course, you want everybody to be healthy when you're talking about head injuries. But if it takes him even longer to get through the protocol next time, and you're talking about more missed games, that could be a huge piece for this team that they're really relying on.
Ashley Bastock, as always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Ashley.
Thank you.
Ashley Bastock, make sure you check her out. Always great Browns coverage. Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We continue talking Browns. Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and the Locked On Browns podcast straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, with his thoughts on why the Browns didn't bring back Nick Chubb.
They had drafted 2 running backs. They had reduced Ford's contract, understanding he's running back 3, and that would have made Chubb running back.
But Tony, doesn't that just mean that the Browns don't think he's actually going to get back to even slightly who he was?
That's pretty much what it means.
Yeah, and the reason for that is they made up their mind months ago.
Yeah.
Months ago, when Andrew came out and said, well, Nick is probably going to test it. That said to me, whoop, whoop,
see,
whoop.
because he knew at that time that Chubb still considered himself a running back 1 or 2. Like Joe Mixon is a starter in Houston, so he'll go in as running back 2, but he saw what happened in his career and others. He could easily be their lead running back.
Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, Browns on SI, and the Locked On Browns podcast. Spencer, everybody's upset about Nick Chubb not being re-signed. The other thing I would add, I think it tells you where the roster is. They're looking to get younger.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, they said it there, but like Andrew Berry at the Combine making it known that they were going to let him test free agency, I think was kind of the first step towards, if you're trying to cope with a difficult thing, it's the first step is like, well, there's denial and then there's like acceptance. And I think that was the first step towards acceptance from people that this might actually be something that happens and he might not wear a Browns uniform anymore. I think the drafting 2 running backs felt like the final nail in the coffin, but then even the restructure of Jerome Ford's contract kind of felt like an additional one there. I think Andrew Berry's tone, look no further than the fact that Andrew Berry's tone on the subject changed from this year to from last year to this year. Like last year, they made it very clear that they were going to bring him back. They said they didn't want Nick Chubb's career to end that way here in Cleveland, and they kept that promise. They did bring him back. This year, it was more so like walking on eggshells. Well, we'll see what happens. We're going to let things kind of play out. And so I think it had been leading towards this for a while. I will say, I just thought it was an easy PR move, right? Especially with everything going on with this team right now, the aftermath of this Deshaun Watson situation sort of falling apart, and you're trying to kind of get out of that now. Keeping Nick Chubb around would have been an easy way to just quell fans and keep them happy for a season and give them something to cheer about in a year that might not be that successful for you as a franchise. But they chose to just rip off the Band-Aid and, as you alluded to, get younger, especially at that position. And yeah, now it's about what those guys are going to do kind of moving forward. And I don't want to gloss over the fact that Nick Chubb is an iconic figure in Cleveland Browns history. At some point maybe he ends up with his name in the Ring of Honor. There's always that possibility, especially if he comes back at some point late in his career. We'll see how that all plays out. And I understand you can go back to when the team returned in 99. There might not be a player that resonated more with this fan base and connected more than this fan base, and that was adored the same way as Nick Chubb was. He's an iconic figure, and so I get the emotional attachment there. It's going to be weird seeing him in a different uniform. I, for one, as somebody who covers this team, he was my favorite player just to watch any given week or Sunday, just how good he was. And you always knew whether you were at the 10-yard line, your own 10-yard line, or the opposing 10-yard line, he could break one for a touchdown. He was a remarkable talent. They don't necessarily think or know that that's going to come back to him. Maybe it does with Houston. He's always out there to try to prove people wrong, so we'll see. And obviously that would be some egg on the Browns' face if he does return to form. But I understood the move from a business standpoint. It's just hard because we all understand what Nick Chubb meant to this city, to this fan base, and what he represents for this city and this fan base and that team, frankly. And in a transitional period, those things are always hard to kind of come to terms with.
So do you think now there's more pressure on Judkins and Sampson to try to follow Nick Chubb now that they are directly following him?
So I don't know that it's because they're following him as much at the running. I get where that argument would come from, especially because you're following an all-time great. I mean, we do that in other parts of the league, right? When Bill Belichick leaves, the guy who was going to replace him and Jerome Mayo was always going to be measured at a certain level, and he only made it that 1 year. You have the Tom Brady situation, right? When he left, nobody wants to be the guy after the guy, right? So I get that, but I do think. Running, if it was a quarterback, I think it'd be a little bit different. The bigger thing that I think could become problematic is if Judkins struggles in year one, or that tandem sort of struggles in year one, and Chubb does end up having a really productive career and maybe has 1,000 yards and returns somewhat to form. That's the one thing that I think people will look at and be like, well, look what he's doing over here while we have this over here. But I have a lot of high hopes for Quinshon Judkins. I think he's going to be great. And I think that tandem of him and Dylan Sampson are I don't know. I kind of get the sense, or at least from my perspective, it feels like people will give them sort of a fair shake here and they won't hold him to that standard. And I think it's unfair to hold him to that standard, frankly, because Nick Chubb was an otherworldly talent. And I also think the running back position in particular, how many years was Nick Chubb one of the best running backs in football? And the Browns had 2 playoff appearances, one that he wasn't even really part of in 2023. one playoff win to show for it. Like, I think people understand the makeup of this league today, where you win with a lot of other, the quarterback most notably, but a lot of other different players being involved. It's not just about running backs anymore. And we always like to throw on the phrase that running backs are a dime a dozen. So, like, I think people understand there was an aura about Nick Chubb that can't be replicated, and that's where, Quinshon Judkins shouldn't try to replicate that. But if he just comes in and he's himself and he's a productive back, like, if the Browns come out the other side of this rebuild with the right quarterback and the right parts to contend, they can win a Super Bowl with somebody like Quinshon Judkins as their future back without question, even if he's not Nick Chubb.
All right, so other than quarterback, because we'll get into quarterbacks next segment, who are you most interested to see at mandatory minicamp, and what are you paying attention to tomorrow when that gets underway?
I got two answers for you here, Dave, if I can. One is going to be Dawand Jones, just because we haven't seen him, obviously, at practice yet, and what role he's going to play, because he's generally been that outside receiver throughout his career. But right now, the Browns slot wide receiver spot is kind of the one that's an open competition. We don't know who's going to sort of take that role, what that's going to look like. So I'm fascinated to see how they sort of handle that, who maybe gets the first reps there with Dawand Jones actually present for some of these drills and practice and all these different things. So that'll be one thing I'm certainly watching. The other one is going to be, I know we talked about this a little bit last week, Dave, like with Dawand Jones looking as good as he has, this is his first chance to go up against Myles Garrett. I know it's different. No pads. They're not going like full speed. There's not like the tackling and hitting and the bumping and grinding that goes on in the trenches that you would see on a fully padded practice. But I am curious to just see, like, okay, Myles is a guy who's explosive off the edge. How quick can Dawand Jones kind of get to him and get his hands on him? And that's going to be something that I think is a storyline leading up to the season anyway. Just how Myles Garrett maybe prepares Dawand Jones for everything he could potentially see from opposing defensive ends and pass rushers as he continues to try to build upon this early foundation that he's already built, where he looks healthy and he looks really good. So those are two, I think, key things I'll be looking at for sure at mandatory minicamp this week.
So is there a free agent signing or a trade that you think is out there before training camp occurs that Andrew Berry's involved in to try to upgrade whatever area of this roster?
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up because I was just kind of thinking about this today, and I haven't vetted it enough to like give you a solid name yet. I take that back. There is one guy I was kind of curious about, and that's John Mechie from the from the Texans. Yeah. First round or early, I don't know if he was a first round pick. I forgot the top of my head, but anyway, early pick for them a couple years ago, and then he got hurt. And he's just kind of had this like tumultuous career where he hasn't been able to stay on the field. But like, that's the type of player the Browns would maybe take a chance on, right? Like somebody who is trying to kind of revive their career and hasn't quite found their footing just yet, or is coming back from injury or whatever it might be. So that was kind of an idea that I had, because I do think wide receiver is the biggest thing they still need to address. You could argue, I guess, tackle or more offensive line depth as well. But I think that tops the list. But in that vein, I think just something to bolster that wide receiver room could be in the cards here. And I'd be shocked if Andrew Berry isn't picking up the phones. Maybe it doesn't happen until training camp, right? Like last year, we heard all the rumors of the Browns being linked to Brandon Ayuk with the 49ers. I don't think that's in the cards this year, just because his dead cap hit after he signed the extension with them is too high. But like something like that, where there's a receiver that maybe doesn't show up to training camp, or there's murmurs that somebody's disgruntled and they want a fresh start, and maybe the Browns get involved and pick up the phone. So I think wide receiver, if we're talking about at least a position that they're going to look at, is probably something that Andrew Berry's going to be making some calls about. That could come in the next couple of months here, or the next month or so here before training camp, or it could come once training camp gets going and they really get a sense of what they have at that position behind Jerry Jeudy.
Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, the Locked On Browns podcast, and I can step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We're talking quarterbacks in the Browns. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and the Locked On Browns podcast. Peter Schrager, ESPN's Get Up, talking about Shedeur Sanders.
The league spoke when he wasn't taken in the first round, but I don't think anybody expected him to go in the 5th round. That felt very personal to Shedeur. That said, I'm told that he came into minicamps, and I spoke to people this weekend, and was as good a young third-day pick you could imagine in how he handled himself. Now, you're asking him to find a way to not only get on this roster, which he will, but to then be able to get reps in training camp and then win the job. That's asking a lot. However, you're asking a quarterback room that doesn't have that. There is no Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford in there. It is wide open. If you're thinking the best man can win, he might have the most skills. It's just really hard as a day 3 pick to do that in June. He's going to have to do it in August.
You know, and listen, I'm wrong so often that I'm allowed to point out when I was right. The week after the draft, I said, just watch. The stories coming out of there are going to be, Browns pleasantly surprised with what they see from Shedeur. They have every reason in the world to want this to work. He has a 5 next to his name as a 5th-round pick, but he was at worst a 2nd-round talent. There's every reason in the world where they could come out of this looking like the same geniuses that San Francisco looks like for taking Brock Purdy where they did. There's nothing but upside for Cleveland in this.
And Spencer, I've kind of been saying this all show. The rookies have to earn playing time. It has to be. It has to become more apparent to the coaches and players that that's the way it works with rookie quarterbacks earning a starting spot. Everybody's going, this guy's really good. It can't be okay. Well, we don't have a great answer, so you're in, kid.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's like the first round guy, right? Like, unless you took a quarterback in the first round where you're basically signaling to everybody, we are investing the time and the resources in this guy panning out. And even then, sometimes teams slow play it. Although I think gone are the days of feeling like you have to redshirt a rookie quarterback necessarily. So, yeah, like, listen, I think what was said there is pretty poignant in terms of Shedeur probably was not a day 3 talent and probably should have gone on day 2. I think that's been regurgitated time and time again at this point by me, by others, probably by yourself as well, Dave. And he does have to kind of come in and earn his stripes. You can't just give him the job immediately. And I do think it's going to be difficult for him to earn the job because of that, because of where he sort of sits on the depth chart right now. But that doesn't mean he won't play this season. That doesn't mean he won't be a good quarterback. And as I've continued to say as well, the Browns owe it to themselves to kind of see what he and Dylan Gabriel bring to the table in this first year so they can get a better sense of, all right, do we need to prioritize quarterback? I do think, too, like, something that hasn't been talked about enough with Shedeur is, like, his attitude about all this. Because while everybody around him and on the outside is, like, arguing and entrenched in these wars over, like, should he play, should he not play, was he a 5th-round pick, was he not a 5th-round pick, and, like, arguing about these things and how unfair he's being treated, he's just basically shown up, kept his head down, and put in the work, and basically told everybody that he wants to put in the work and that he's willing to put in the work to get himself to a position where he can potentially earn this job. Like, he has said all the right things. He has done all the right things. It has been, like, for as much as it's a story, as much as Shedeur is a polarizing player and gets a lot of attention outside of that building, he has not been this, like, big distraction in the building that everyone sort of assumed he was going to be. He's been totally fine. He's been totally normal. He's come off as somebody who wants to work hard and earn his keep and earn his role. And I do think he deserves to be commended for that, because staying above that fray while all these things are being sort of fired about you and a lot is being said about you outside is tough to do. But I respect the fact that he's come in and just kind of worked and is ignoring all that stuff and just trying to put himself in the best position to compete for that starting quarterback position. Position.
I keep saying that. I think he's incredibly likable. He's just a likable player. So let me ask you this, and I'm curious as to your opinion. Kenny Pickett. I think the Browns view him as a young guy they think they can fix. Remember, he's 15-10 as a starter. 6 of those 15 wins are fourth quarter comebacks. The thing everybody points to, I think it's 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Hasn't thrown for more than 2 touchdowns in a game. That's a function of kind of the offense that he was in. But it's a guy, if he was a rookie, if he was still at this first team, he'd still be on his rookie contract.
Yeah, listen, I think Kevin Stefanski looked at his former team last year, the Minnesota Vikings, saw what they did in Sam Darnold and said, I want that. That's kind of what the Kenny Pickett deal felt like to me. And it was the first deal they made for a quarterback this offseason, which is why there's so much talk about how they view him, what level of respect they have for him, and why he seems to be the first guy up getting a lot of the first team reps and things, because there's a real possibility he's your starting quarterback week 1 for this team because they view him that way. I think they want him to be their Sam Darnold. They want him to become this reclamation project that they sort of turn back. They not save, I mean, kind of save his career, I guess, to a degree, but like prove that there's a good quarterback in there, maybe gets a big payday down the line, or maybe they make the big payday down the line to keep him or whatever. I think they want to sort of prove that to themselves. I think Kevin Stefanski feels like he can do that because he has taken other quarterbacks that have just kind of been okay throughout their career and made them look better than, above average at least. Like Jacoby Brissett was a competent quarterback and did some nice things here. Case Keenum when he was filling in for Baker Mayfield. Like there's all these random quarterbacks that he seems to bring the best out of, and I think he believes he can do that with Kenny Pickett as well. So, I mean, listen, we know the quarterbacks. It's going to be all eyes on them every single day we're out there. I do think right now they probably would lean Kenny Pickett if the season started today, just based off what they've said about him and how they feel. But I also think he's had the worst offseason program, at least of the practices we've seen of anybody in this quarterback room. So this week's a big week for him to sort of do it against, your full ones being out there. I know it's just helmets, but you have Myles Garrett now. You'll have David Njoku as a weapon. Like what do things look like with all these guys now out there? And then obviously training camp, it'll sort of be, I think, this race between him and Joe Flacco. And at this point, I think Flacco is ahead of him in terms of like the learning curve, but I don't know that he's ahead of him on the depth chart. So we'll see. If it was up to me, and I don't know if I shared this with you, Dave, but I feel like Flacco makes more sense as your week 1 starter, especially for the gauntlet of a season you start with on the schedule. Because if you're looking for a quarterback that's going to make everybody around you better, and you have a young team with a rookie tight end, 2 rookie running backs, a tight end, a veteran tight end who's trying to bounce back, and a receiver room that hasn't really proven much aside from Jerry Jeudy, you want a quarterback that's going to bring out the best in people and raise their game. That, to me, is Joe Flacco. I don't know that Kenny Pickett can do that. And so if it was up to me, I would start Flacco. But I think the Browns, at least right now, still sort of favor Pickett and want to see what he does with a lot of these opportunities that are coming his way, both at minicamp this week and then training camp in August.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. The thing I would say, they got to stop turning the ball over. Kenny Pickett doesn't turn the ball over. Joe Flacco has. And again, they'll be able to figure that out. Before I let you go, if the Browns are going to win, I think you and I both agree 8-9 games is probably the ceiling for this team, maybe 7. If the Browns are going to reach that ceiling and be around 500, what has to go right?
It's a really good question. I think the run game has to return to form, like the run game that Joe Bitonio was talking about just last week, getting back to what they did in 2020 and 2021. That has to sort of be the staple of the offense and be the thing that they can sort of lean on. I think you just mentioned one of the things, protecting the football. That was a problem last year, whether it was Deshaun, whether it was Jameis, whether it was 2 of the young guys and Bailey Zappi and DTR that they had late in the season. Protecting the football was a huge issue. I think the defense needs to create more turnovers as well to get more opportunities for the offense. But I know we talked a couple weeks ago about like the win total and how where this team could get. If they just have competent offense that can, move up and down the field and produce longer drives and punctuate them with points, they're going to be, they could stumble their way into 3 more wins than they had a year ago for sure. And so I think a lot of what has to go right starts with the offense and just like finding their identity and all those things. I think the defense gets a bad rap for last year because the team was so bad, but I think they kept that team in a lot of games as long as they could, and then the floodgates just kind of couldn't hold anymore. And I think they have a chance to bounce back to sort of being this really good unit again and showing that they are a really good unit just in general if they have an offense that can finally complement it. So for me, I think a lot of it starts on the offensive side, but I do think the defense creating more turnovers and opportunities would go a long way as well.
Yeah, and again, they're going to be relying on 2 rookie running backs, a rookie tight end, so they need some of the rookies to kind of grow up pretty quickly. Spencer German, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Spencer.
Always a pleasure, Dave. I'll talk to you again soon, man.
Sounds good. Spencer Jordan, make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fan. Also writes for Cleveland Browns SI, and he is the host of the Locked On Browns podcast. Always really good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.